Thanks. Thank you. I'm just trying to figure out how I'm going to get that thing in my carry-on. May I have the first slide, please? I would like to thank the National Press Foundation for this truly unexpected honor. My father, Norman Newhouse, was actually editor of the Long Island Press during the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and he died many years ago, but he was certainly my inspiration, and I'd like to think that this is for him. This honor really belongs not to me, but to all the journalists at the Patriot-News, and I'd like to mention just a couple. Our publisher, John Kirkpatrick, who has been a personal mentor to me. My partners in crime, executive editor Kate Barron and AME Mike Feely. And of course, our lead reporter on the Sandusky stories, Sarah Ganem. At the age of 24, Sarah has as much drive and integrity, and she's videotaping me now, as much drive and integrity as any journalist I've ever met. It is a joy to work with her. I have the next slide, please. I'm going to show you a few front pages from November, but I'm not really going to talk about how we landed these particular stories because I think it would be pretty boring. There really was no magic formula here. Just a lot of long hours and shoe leather journalism by Sarah and her colleagues. Next slide, please. The funny thing was how the national media kept describing us. They called us the small Patriot-News, the tiny Patriot-News. I swear it's someone probably somewhere probably marveled that this coverage was coming from the microscopic subatomic Patriot-News. It is true that with 19 full-time news reporters, that's 19, our staff is not large. But it is equally true that these stories did not come out of nowhere. Last summer, as you all know, we had an earthquake here on the East Coast, so-called. And when the newsroom stopped shaking, all of us being earthquake illiterates promptly did exactly what you're not supposed to do and rushed outside. But the thing was, in the 45 seconds or so that it took us to reach the parking lot, we learned the following: that the quake was relatively harmless, that it stretched not only across Pennsylvania, but all the way from New York to Virginia. And we learned all that not from any other journalists, but from Facebook and Twitter. And of course, moments later, we had the information posted on our own digital platforms. Next slide, please. Well, what does that have to do with our coverage of Penn State? Everything. The thing is that today, information, as Eric was talking about, is instantaneous and ubiquitous. Or as one of my daughters, who's actually here tonight, used to say when she was little, information is icky-biticus. But if information is everywhere, then having information is no longer enough. A public that is stuffed to the gills with information is starving for real reporting, including real local reporting, for reporting that digs, that illuminates, that makes connections. Next slide, please. Now, I know that that can be a challenge even for the great news organizations represented in this room. And let me tell you, on behalf of all the small newsrooms in America, it can be a huge challenge when you have 19 news reporters to cover 5 counties. I swear, there are days when I kind of, I just sort of look up and I say, Lord, if you didn't want my staff to spend most of their time covering meetings, why did you create zoning boards? Next slide, please. Seriously, the tragedy is that at this exact moment, when the public is desperate for real local reporting, budget cuts are leading many newsrooms to choose the opposite, to cut back on enterprise and to chase the exact same information that everybody else has and that increasingly our readers already know anyway. Years ago, we made the decision to hop off of that merry-go-round. Oh, our reporters have to master their beats. They have to report information, lots of it, and yes, preferably first. But that is not their job. That's the precursor. It's the context of their job. It's like I always say, if someone asked you, what did you do on your vacation? You probably wouldn't say, oh, I did the dishes. Maybe you washed some dishes. But what did you do? Next slide, please. Our reporters gather and post and tweet plenty of information, but that is not what they do. They have one assignment above all: bring us the stories that no one else has. Bring us the stories that no one else has. Of course, who knew Sarah Gannon was actually going to take me seriously, right? My kids never did. Next slide, please. What people have responded. In November, our digital readership tripled to about 6.5 million unique visitors, and we've retained many of them. We now have readers in all 50 states and in 223 foreign countries. Now, a story like this one doesn't come along every week. That's probably not such a bad thing. I received one email last fall from a reporter at a major U.S. daily who said, "Keep up the great work. You can sleep when you're dead." Next slide, please. But when a news organization with daily print circulation of about 67,000 can continue to attract 4.5 million unique visitors per month, mostly in central Pennsylvania, thankfully for our advertisers, but literally from across the globe, well, it says something that makes me optimistic about our industry. It says that even amid the digital information glut, what readers want most from journalists, including local journalists, is what we do best. And for recognizing that kind of effort in Harrisburg on behalf of our entire subatomic staff, I thank you very, very much.